Okay, 3, 2, 1. What is up, guys? My name's Mario, and today I'm going to be doing something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I'm simply just going to look at some old artworks of mine and basically give my thoughts about them. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to group the batches of artwork I'm going to look at by year. Instead, I'll do something like this. Think of it as chapters in my art journey. I'll divide this video into chapters and then I'll leave the timestamps in the description. Before we get started, there's a few things I would like to mention. First, I want you guys to know that I'm kind of nervous to do this kind of video because this is something I've never done before. So if I end up having a hard time trying to get words out, it's probably because I'm feeling a little anxious. Secondly, I would like to warn you that I do have some artwork containing some mild gore, so please proceed this video with caution. It's not that many though. I'm just going to showcase about 2 or 3 gory artworks. Everything else is non-gory. If you're still uncomfortable with that, however, you can either skip the gory parts or just click off this video. Lastly, expect me to bring up a variety of franchises because, let's just say when it comes to my artwork, I tend to draw a variety of characters. Mainly anthropomorphic characters, or creatures with human characteristics. I don't just stick with one character or one franchise. I will also be bringing up fan art I made for content creators as well. I'll try my best to provide as much context as I can about whichever artwork I'm showcasing. So all I ask is that you just try to bear with me. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started with the video. It's just me and my thoughts. Here we go, let's do this. So, I believe this is the earliest drawing I have. I don't know when exactly I made this, but I know it was around 7th grade, which would have been around 2016. I believe it was during 4th period. I had just finished my work, and I have decided to spend my free time drawing one of my favorite Pokemon. And so I looked up a tutorial and drew one of the Lake Guardians. As you can see, I drew this in a traditional way. I used a Sharpie, a pencil, and I believe some color pencils as well. I don't think I tried to sketch this. I just looked at the tutorial and just drew from that. I also added his name at the bottom and a quote at the top. At the time, I believe it would have been a year since I got into Pokemon. I think I got into Pokemon in 2015, so it should have been at least 1 year at the time of making this drawing. And yeah, I can definitely see a lot of errors, like anatomy errors. Plus the lines don't look good. Plus it was traced, so... And yeah. And that's all my thoughts about this drawing. And then later on I would go on to do the rest of the Lake Guardians. Here's Mesprit. The paper's a bit torn. And right here is Azelf. Like with this one. Like with the first one, I also added their names and some quotes. So, okay. Here's another Pokemon drawing I've made. I believe this one is also traced. And I think I used a different set of paper. I think I used print paper for this one because the notebook paper was more fragile and I didn't really like it. Let's see, what else do I have? Here's one of my favorite legendary Pokemons, Kyogre. Also Trace. I believe this guy is Landorus, right? And yeah. Oh, here we go. Here's Rocket. I believe I made this drawing based on the toy figure I looked up. And yeah, I would usually draw these during school after I finished my work. Here's Bowser, by the way. Lines don't look too great, and anatomy doesn't look great either. Here's Mario, Paper Mario. And here's one of the bad guys from Pokemon. Anatomy looks terrible on the hands. And yeah, those are some of the drawings I made during that time. Let's move on to the next chapter. So the funny thing about these drawings is that I actually documented when I drew this, the name of the character, which series they're from, and the number of drawings I drew during that time. As you can see, this was during 8th grade, and this was drawn during the first part of 8th grade, to say the least. Or the first semester. Here's Bowser Jr. Lines look pretty terrible, and it's obviously pretty traced. I never uploaded these drawings to social media, by the way, because at the time, let's just say I wasn't really into social media. You see, I had just turned 14 during this time, which means I should be old enough to join social media, to sign up for social media. The reason I didn't was because I was kind of afraid of social media at the time, because social media can be messed up sometimes. So, as you can imagine, none of these drawings ended up getting uploaded to any social media platforms. If they did, I probably would have been called out for tracing. Here's Weavile, another one of my favorite Pokemon. I think the proportion looks a little off. Okay, here's Dragonite. Here's Meowth. By the way, because I didn't have social media, I didn't really have anybody telling me that tracing wasn't okay. So as you can imagine, I just kept tracing and tracing and tracing, without ever knowing that this wasn't okay. Here's Scoochra right here. I've also drawn a lot of Pokemon during this chapter. In comparison, during the previous chapter, I drew a lot more variety of characters from different franchises and series. Here's one of the legendary Pokemon from Generation 7. Anatomy can be better on this one. Like with the previous drawings, I would draw these after I finished my work. Here's my Diana right here. Also, I drew a lot of Pokemon from Generation 7 because that was like the latest generation at the time. This one is one of my favorites from Gen 7. Here's one of my favorite Bug-type Pokemon. And here's a little Meowth. A technique I would use when drawing certain colors, let's say like gray, I would take a pencil and then color over areas where they're supposed to be light gray, and then I would erase it to kind of fade out the colors. The reason for that is I didn't really have any light gray crayons or color pencils available, so I just had to improvise, you know what I mean? I just had to look for other ways to do light gray. And yeah, I believe that's... Okay, it's not all of the drawings I made, but I think that's all the ones I'm showing. I wonder why I haven't gotten any cringe for these drawings, by the way. I'm talking about all these trace drawings that I made several years ago. Why haven't I cringed at any of them so far? I'm just wondering. Anyway, let's go on to the next chapter. Okay, so now I just turned 14 years old and I just started high school. And I'm still continuing to trace and still continuing to draw in the traditional way. Honestly, this is one of my favorite drawings during this chapter. Not my favorite drawings of all time, but just during this chapter. Even though it's pretty much traced. Around this time specifically, I still didn't really have social media, but that didn't really change until a few months later. Here's another Pokemon. Here's Vector from Sonic. Here's Metal Sonic. As you can see, I drew a lot more characters from different franchises during this chapter. Not just Pokemon. Here's BB-8. I believe a Star Wars movie was released during this time. Actually, yeah. Okay, the date said January 20th, so I believe it would have been a month since the movie was released. So yeah, at the time of drawing this, I believe it would have been a month since the Star Wars movie was released. Here's Bladders. Look, just looking at it, you can see there's lots of errors. Oh, okay. I made this flag for a Minecraft world of mine. I just thought I don't know why, but I just thought I'd do it. I think this was the first time I would use a digital art program to make this artwork. The program I used was Ibis Paint X. It was free and I did the sketch on traditional paper, and then I used Ibis Paint X to basically enhance the colors, or something like that. And this was the last drawing I made during this chapter. March 17, 2018. After that, I kind of just stopped drawing because I kind of just lost interest in the hobby and I needed to catch up with schoolwork. And yeah. My art journey kind of went stagnant after that last piece of artwork. But as I mentioned, the drawings were traced. So it's not like I was making any progress anyway, to be honest. On to the next part. Damn it. Okay, these drawings is where I get the most cringe from. There's just, the depiction of them just looks so fucking weird. It just looks weird. It just looks really weird. Why did I make these drawings like this? Okay, so back in 2019, which is when these drawings were made, I had a hobby for writing stories. Unfortunately, many of those stories were pretty weird, and my 15-year-old self wanted to make scenes from those weird stories. Oh my god. Shit. So, as a result, I ended up making drawings like this. Yes, I know, it's pretty cringe. Okay, let's get through them. Okay, I think I made this shortly after the first trailer of Pokemon Sword and Shield released. Obviously, the anatomy looks terrible, and Scorbunny should be way smaller than me. I was 15 when I was making this. I had just gotten back into drawing, and at the time, I believe it would have been nearly a year since my hiatus basically started. Basically since this last drawing. Okay, here's another weird one from a story. Honestly, just looking at these just makes me cringe. By the way, I've been really starting to get used to using digital art programs. Like I said, I would usually draw the sketch on traditional paper, and then finish the drawing on Ibis Paint X. Here's another cringy one. Oh my god. I do not like this guy. The guy with the black cap. This guy's like my least favorite OC of mine. Here's another one from a weird story. And yet another cringy one. I honestly asked myself, what was I thinking? Okay, here's a Roblox cringy one. Again, I do not like this guy. He just looks so weird. Plus, proportion and anatomy look so off. This one's another cringy one. Another cringy Roblox one. Anatomy and proportion looks terrible, line art looks pretty bad. And this one was for Lumion Legacy. I think this was fan art from Lumion Legacy. Okay, I like this one. I like the concept of this drawing, but the execution could be a little better. I probably should have added an actual background, plus the anatomy and proportions look pretty terrible. And yeah, this artwork can just use some more work. It can use some more work. This one doesn't look too bad either. By the way, around this time, I believe I have just gotten into social media, and I was uploading some of these cringy drawings on the platform. I was uploading a lot of these cringy drawings onto Twitter and Instagram. I wonder how I didn't get embarrassed by this. How was I not embarrassed at the time of uploading this? This one doesn't look too bad. This one's another one that's not bad. Although I still don't like this OC. Apart from the legs, this one doesn't seem too bad. Actually, no, take that back. The anatomy looks pretty bad. And the background feels too stiff, to say the least. Too simple. These work anime. Okay, so these guys are from anime I've been watching around this time. Fairy Tail and the Seven Deadly Sins. I thought I'd make a neat crossover of them. Okay, this one is heavily referenced. The only difference being the Team Rocket outfit. Speaking of, around this time, I started to fizzle out the tracing and try making some actual fan art. Here's Morgana. I don't think the colors look too good. This one is a favorite of mine from this chapter, showing different cats from different franchises. I tend to do a lot of crossover artwork, because I like to engage with multiple franchises rather than just stick with one. Here's another crossover artwork. And another. And yet another. Okay, I also like to make drawings of my Roblox avatar, which would have looked like this at the time. I will say, the avatar looks pretty villainous. Let's just say my 15-year-old self was in a phase, and I would often dress up like this. Here's a slightly better one of my Roblox avatar. In Roblox Anatomy, this doesn't look too bad, but in actual Anatomy, not the best. I don't like this guy. I cringe every time I see this guy. He just looks so weird. Okay, I think that's it. I think I'm good. That's enough. See, the problem with these drawings is that they didn't really have a lot of vision. I just did random drawings without really thinking about it, thinking about the concept, the depiction, the execution, none of that. And as a result, I ended up making cringy drawings like this. By the way, I've also made artwork for a few Roblox friends of mine, as well as some other Roblox players. Here's one of them. Here's another. To be honest, these kinds of artwork don't look too bad. It could be better, but in terms of Roblox Anatomy, it's actually pretty good, but like I said, it could be better. Anyways, let's move on to the next chapter. Okay, so now I'm 16 years old. I have just gotten Procreate. I believe this was the very first drawing I made on Procreate. So like with previous drawings, I would do the sketch on traditional paper, and then do the line art and coloring on Procreate. I don't think this is as cringy as the other artworks, but I think it's still pretty cringy. Obviously, I'm pretty sure Sandslash wouldn't be this big. I don't think he would be this huge. Plus, obviously, line art's not good, anatomy doesn't look good, and I don't think my OC's hand should be a circle. I believe I made this as fan art for a Pokemon OC I really liked. By the way, this is also the first artwork where I would add shading and lighting to the characters and background. Honestly, for my first try, I think I did a somewhat decent job with it. With the shading and lighting. It could be better, but I think I did pretty okay. Okay, so this was made after Creekcraft won RB battles. This was basically my congratulation gift to him. I think this one looks pretty okay. Not the best, but it looks pretty okay. Although the shading that could be a little better. Okay, so now at this point, I'm no longer doing the sketch on traditional paper. I'm doing all the work on Procreate. This was the first drawing I did fully on Procreate. The shading doesn't look too bad, but let's just say I feel like some parts just feel kind of random, you know what I mean? Proportion doesn't look good. I don't think Gavamon should be this big. The color choice could be better. Lines could also be better. Plus, I think I was too reliant on quick shape, which is something like this. Anyway, moving on. Okay. I think this one doesn't look too bad. It's basically Halloween fan art on Lumion Legacy. I don't think this one looks too bad. I say my only criticism of this is, of course, the anatomy and proportions, some lighting areas, and the background. The background could be a little better. It could add some more detail. Also, the items on the floor feel somewhat random. They feel pretty random. So this was made shortly after the second Battle Theater update in Lumion Legacy. Basically features me and Ikazune together. I don't think this artwork looks too bad though. The shading could be better, plus the anatomy is not that great, as well as the proportions, and the background could be better as well. By the way, I uploaded the speed art of this artwork to YouTube and it apparently got over 300 views. I don't know how though. This artwork isn't that good, to be honest. In case you don't know, from 2019 to 2021, I would upload speed art of any recent artworks I've made to YouTube. And yes, even the cringy ones. Okay, this one's a favorite of mine from this chapter. Basically, it's Geklo in a cap. Anatomy looks somewhat okay. Background looks somewhat okay. My only problem with this is the lines the random icons, and part of the background shading. Okay, this one was... I made this... Okay. Let's just say I made this artwork to congratulate the YouTuber Elizabeth Kate for reaching 100k subscribers. Overall, apart from some anatomy issues and the background, I don't think it looks too bad. Although, I don't think Happy should be here. Another favorite of mine during this chapter is just me riding on Zygarde, my favorite legendary Pokemon. I don't think this looks too bad, but I should have made Zygarde's body a little less long, plus the background and anatomy. Okay, so this one was... This is actually fan art. This is fan art Creekgrass mascots. I like this 2019 design of Trevor, which would have been new at the time, so I thought I'd make some artwork of him. And maybe give his mascot some muscles as well. Okay, this one's a little cringy. I think this one was a little cringy. Actually, no, it's very cringy. I think this one's very cringy. I'm just gonna say this was fan art of one of my favorite Lumians, and I guess I kind of made the fan art in a weird way. Background looks nice, but let's just say it looks weird. It just looks weird to me. Anyway, moving on. I see a lot of random characters. I can definitely see I added a lot of random characters. Yeah, as I mentioned, I tend to make a lot of crossover artwork, to say the least. Like this one, as you can see. I like to draw multiple characters at once, rather than just stick with one character. I still like to do that to some degree. This one's not too bad, although there's something else I noticed, like, it looks like I intended to draw Happy a lot from Fairy Tail. I guess I really like the cat. Also, the hat should not be this small. Okay, this one, doesn't look, I don't think it's that cringy, but some parts do look a little weird. I think Armente's Eaglet looks pretty good, and Regana doesn't look too bad either. But, okay, let's just say some parts doesn't look too bad, other parts look kind of cringy. This is another weird one. As you can imagine, I tend to draw a lot of weird artworks. I had no idea what I was thinking. I just kind of like made random artworks, lots of crossovers, and like I said, I didn't really have any vision for this. Here we go. Here's a fun one. This was made for Christmas of 2019. I think it looks pretty decent, for this chapter at least. Not really my best artwork, but it's pretty decent. I can definitely see I added a lot of different characters. The anatomy, about the anatomy. It's not the best, but I don't think it looks too bad either. I see a lot of Christmas items, and a lot of items from creature capture games, and yeah. Let's continue. Okay, so here's the deal about this one. At the time of making this, I had absolutely no idea that people basically had a thing for war media. It basically means when people fantasize characters eating other characters. Yes, I know, it's pretty weird. It's a pretty weird thing. I think the artwork is pretty weird as well. I probably made this for a cringe story of mine or something like that. Or perhaps I saw other people do it and I thought it'd be cool if I try making that kind of artwork as well. As you can see, the artwork is pretty cringe. There's anatomy errors, the background doesn't look good, proportion errors, and placement errors, so many errors. And overall, it just feels kinda cringe. It just feels kinda cringe to me. That said, I will admit, I would like to make a better Crocodile Vor artwork someday. Not something like this, but with a better depiction to say the least. Also, I will be more cautious about who sees this kind of artwork, because I think some people would find this kind of artwork a little weird. Okay, this is basically Yoshi, but in the clothing I would usually wear at the time. The clothing I would usually wear in my avatars. I also try adding detail to the background. Also, I think this was the first one where I used a bunch of layers. Before I would just do everything on one layer. Okay, this was for Creekgrass' 23rd birthday. I think it looks pretty decent. I don't know why Happy is here though. I like this one. I like this one from this. This is another favorite of mine from this chapter. It's basically fan art, you know. I think the background looks okay. There's not a lot of randomness going on. And the lighting and shading looks pretty good. Okay, this is a cringy one. Also, honestly. Also, I'm gonna be honest, drawing Rocket was pretty hard. But anyways, on to the next. Another cringy one, let's skip. And there we go. Sorry, those drawings were just way too cringe. But anyways, this is when I tried experimenting with my art style. I thought I'd give the Paper Mario style a shot. I actually like this artwork. I think I did a pretty good job drawing Happy in the Paper Mario art style. I say my only criticism is the shading could be a lot better. I also did it for the rest of the Fairy Tail seeds as well. And then afterwards, I would make Paper Mario artwork of some online peers and influencers. Here's one of them. Honestly, I don't think this kind of artwork is too bad. In fact, I think it looks pretty decent. Okay, I say this was vent art. I think I was pretty depressed at the time and I thought I'd make this to basically vent my thoughts out. The depiction of it looks kind of weird. Also, the anatomy looks pretty bad. Alright, next one. I think this was a redraw of one of my older artworks. To see how much I've improved. Honestly, I have to do this again someday. I have to try this again. To see how much I've improved since then. I say at the time I definitely showed some improvement, but although there's still some things that I needed to work on, like the proportions, for example, and the background. This isn't an artwork, it's just a photo edit. Let me just say, Raymond from Animal Crossing looks very similar to Alone Meowth, so I thought I'd make a photo edit of that. Okay, this one I like. This, I'm not sure if it's I think this is a first. I believe this was my first ever profile picture I've made. Correction, not the first ever profile picture I've made, but let's just say this is the first 2D artwork profile picture I've made. Not the first ever one I've made, but the first 2D artwork I've made. And honestly, I think it looks pretty good. I think it looks pretty decent. Also, the background isn't mine. I just found some random background on the internet and used that for the artwork because I wasn't really confident that I can draw backgrounds at the time. This was a banner I've made for my social media pages. I've actually had 2 banners, one not featuring Meowth and one with me and Meowth. Let's just say they were for different social media. Let's just say I made 2 for different social media pages. I included Meowth in the banner because why not? He is my favorite Pokemon after all. Anyway, moving on. Okay, this was me doing the 6 fan arts challenge. I say some of the characters look pretty good. The other ones could be a little better. Could have better anatomy and proportions. Okay, this one I actually really like. This one's a favorite of mine. It's fan art of Stefano from the Mario and Luigi series. I think I did a pretty decent job with this one. Also, I honestly think Stefano is an underrated character. Okay, I made this artwork for a trend on Twitter in which you would make parody album artwork of KK Slider. Basically, you replace the artist in the album with KK Slider. The album I did a parody of was called Peter Comes Alive, a live album by the musician Peter Frampton. I don't think it looks too bad, but not too great either. In particular, I think the arms could be a lot better. I don't think KK would have noodle arms. Okay, here we go. This was my first... I wouldn't say this was my first ever OC, but let's just say it was my first OC in which I actually called it an OC. If you know what I mean. I could say this was one of my earliest OCs. Long story short, I saw other people have OCs and thought to myself, why don't I just make one myself? And so I did. I haven't used it in a lot of my artwork since then, but I would really like to remaster this guy someday. Maybe change some of his details, remove all those doors, and give him some backstory. give him basically give him more character depth. I don't know what role he's gonna have in my artworks. I'm still trying to figure that out. Alright, moving on. This one, okay, I think this one doesn't look too bad. It's just me and a cat from Fairy Tale just hanging out. This one doesn't look too bad, but I say the background could be better and the proportions could be better as well as the anatomy. The proportions on my character could be better. Also, I think I made the hat too tall. Okay, this is just me. This is just fan art of me writing on a Lumion, basically. I don't really have much to say about this one. Actually, the hands could be better, but aside from that, I don't really have much to say about this artwork. Real quick, this next artwork may contain some spoilers for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. If you want to avoid spoilers, please feel free to skip to this timestamp. Okay, so here's my first drawing of Iggy. I also believe this was the first time I sketched this on Procreate. Prior to this, I would just get straight to the point and do the line art. Problem was, by not doing the sketch, I don't think the art would look that good. Anyway, it basically depicts a scenario in which Iggy was given an artificial leg after he lost it with his fight against Pet Shop. Okay, I think this one looks pretty decent. I think this artwork looks pretty okay. I say I would probably fix the placement on his arms though. I think the placement could be a lot better. Okay, this is fan art to my favorite artists. I also started adding a white stroke to my artwork, cause why not? And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Here's fan art of Cappy. I think this one looks pretty good. The depiction doesn't look too bad, and the anatomy also doesn't look too bad, and yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about this one, but I think it looks pretty okay. And this was my 2020 birthday artwork. I featured a lot of favorite characters of mine. I had a white stroke, and it basically depicts me and these guys just hanging out, having a little birthday party. I don't think it looks too bad, but the anatomy could be better. I probably should have added a proper background, and there's probably other things worth fixing in this artwork. But aside from that, I think it's pretty okay. I think this drawing doesn't look too bad, but probably not the best either. By the way, I would also like to mention that around this time, I kinda treated art as a side hobby. My main hobby would be content creation and live streaming. So I didn't really prioritize art as I do now. Anyways, let's move on to the next chapter. Around this time, I would have been 17 years old, and this would be my final year of high school. As for this artwork, let's just say for this one, I just found these two to be a little, I don't know, I just kind of found them to be relatable in a way. Relatable to each other, to say the least. I don't know why, but I just do somehow. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this artwork. Okay, so for this one, I thought Willow Wolf was like, about Willow Wolf, I kind of understood where she was coming from, and I didn't really see her as a bad guy, or at least not as bad as other people think she is, which is why I made this tough but soft artwork in a way. Anyways, I think I was getting slightly better with the background and the anatomy and proportions. I was getting slightly better, but they could still use some work. Anyway, moving on. Okay, this was when I was testing out some liner techniques. To be honest, when it comes to art, it's always like the liner that's the hardest part. No matter what, it just always seems to be the line art. I just can't get it right, and it just feels too time consuming. Recently, as of recording this, I've been looking for ways to change up how I do line art. And yeah. Okay, for the next one. This is currently my most liked artwork to date. It received over 200 likes when I posted this on Twitter. I think the shading and anatomy looks okay, but I don't really like the depiction that much. I think it's a little weird. I probably should have just drawn regular fan art of this guy. Like, basically have a normal pose in a normal setting. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this artwork. Okay, so this is another redraw of one of my older works. This is again Creekgrass Mascot. and I think I saw some improvement, but I can definitely see that this artwork can use some work. I can definitely see some improvement, like the lines are better and the background, although other things like the anatomy could use some work. Okay, so this is when I was feeling a little demotivated, and this is actually one of my favorite artworks, to be honest. Not of all time, but one of my favorites during this chapter. I think it did a pretty good job showcasing how I was feeling at the time. Okay, so long story short, I was feeling a little down about myself. I felt like I wasn't going to achieve a lot of things, and I wanted to show that through this artwork. I think it looks pretty good, but I think the hands and arms could be a little better. What I mean by that is, I feel like the hands and arms of JM could be a little shorter, and the hands could have better anatomy as well. I also don't really like the jacket that much. This is an animation I did for Minitoon. Let's just say I wanted to get his attention, to kind of feel validated, so I would constantly make fan arts of him to try to get his attention. Thinking about it, I think the wink looks pretty decent, but the hair can definitely be a lot better. The hair can definitely be animated a lot better. Okay, so this one is another favorite of mine for this chapter. Now, I never really watched the Owl House, but let's just say I like King a lot, so I thought I'd make some fan art of him. I think this one looks pretty good. My only major criticism is the background and that cup right there. A small detail. Okay, this was supposed to be my original persona. I originally wanted to have a wolf persona, so I made Jenny the wolf. But then, I ended up never really using him as my persona, and now I kinda have a Bra as a persona instead. That said, like with Jiro, I would also like to remaster this character, and give him some backstory, and perhaps a new design as well. And also like with Jiro, I have no idea how I'm gonna do that. Actually, I do have an idea, but I just need to carry it out, to say the least. Okay, this is my second banner. This time I made the background myself, and as you can see, I added a bunch of characters. I don't think this banner looks too bad. In fact, I think it looks pretty decent. Okay, so this was my first ever watermark. This is my original version of my watermark. I thought I'd go for a graffiti style look in a way. I just found it to be very artistic. And very edgy as well. And ever since I've been using this watermark for my artwork. One issue I have with this original watermark is that the quality was kind of low. It kind of felt compressed in a way. So later I would make an updated version. This is what the updated version looks like. Not much has changed, but the quality is a lot better. And I added some lighting to the top part of the drawing. And to this day, I've been using this as my main watermark. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so this one is one of my favorite artworks I've made during this chapter. It depicts Pet Shop from JoJo and Articuno from Pokemon battling each other. Basically, both of them are birds, and both of them have ice powers, and I thought it would be cool to make artwork of a scenario in which they fight each other. I think the depiction looks really good, the shading looks nice, and as you can see, I also added some blood to the artwork as well. I say my only criticisms of this artwork is that the anatomy could be better, and I probably should have done some power scaling before I made this artwork. But aside from that, I think this artwork looks pretty decent. Okay, so this is technically my first ever comic, or should I say my first artwork, in which I will make multiple parts of. Basically, it was showcasing that I wasn't really feeling too well at the time. I was feeling kind of depressed. Let's just say I was going through a lot. I had massive amounts of anxiety, I had low self-esteem, and I just thought I expressed all of that through a comic. Now, I think I did a pretty good job, and the comic doesn't look too bad. One criticism I have of this comic is that I probably should have used one of my OCs as the person who asked if I was okay or not, instead of Iggy from JoJo. It just would have made more sense to do that. Also, I think the anatomy and proportions could be a little better, and I probably should have added a background as well. Okay, so Chopper is supposed to be me, This is supposed to be me dressed as a VR chat avatar. Let's just say I often like to dress up as my favorite characters in VR chat. And these guys are supposed to be VR chat players. Around this time I had just signed up for VR chat and I was very nervous to socialize with people, so I tended to be very quiet and just not talked. And of course, I thought I'd make an artwork showing that the legs of the VR chat players could be a little better, but aside from that, I don't really have much else to say about this artwork. Okay, here we go. This was honestly one of my best projects I've ever made. Long story short, is a Friday Night Funkin' skin mod in which I replaced boyfriend with my character. You have no idea how many times I would use this skin mod whenever I played FNF games. Anyway, when I was making this, I didn't want my character to have the same generic animations as boyfriend. So instead I made it look like he was performing and gave him unique animations. I've also slightly changed the anatomy details on my character, such as my face and my hands. So far about half of the animations are finished, and I still need to do the other half, but I haven't really found the motivation to continue the FNF mod. Actually thinking about it, I probably need to remaster it a bit. By the way, as you can imagine, I also used the skin mod in many popular FNF mods. It's worked for some of them, but for others it hasn't really. It's caused the game to crash. I liked using the skin mod during Friday Night Funkin' gameplay so much that I even made shaders for different gameplay moments that usually occurs during mods. Also, at one point I was thinking about making an entire Friday Night Funkin' mod, but I never really went through with that plan. It probably wouldn't have turned out good anyway. Okay, so this is different dogs from media surrounding Iggy. Okay, let's just say Iggy tends to be... Okay, so you know how dogs are known to be a man's best friend? Iggy is not one of that. Iggy is not really a man's best friend. Instead, he prefers independence and constantly attacks humans. You might have seen him doing that in the anime. As you can see, none of these are really like that. And here we go, another birthday artwork. And I had just turned 18. Well, at the time of drawing this. I think around this time, I started using the smudge tool more often in my artworks. And as a result, I added some blending to some areas in my artwork to basically make those parts more, how should I put this, 3D-ish in a way? Anyways, I think this looks pretty decent. Although I probably should have added ears to JM because I'm pretty sure humans don't look like that. Anyways, let's move on to the next chapter. Okay, so now I've become 18 years old, and this was like a mini project of mine in which I would draw my favorite characters taking a selfie. Let's just say I saw other people doing it and I thought I'd do it myself. I often did that a lot. See other people do stuff and then try that thing myself. Now while I was making this, I was kind of doubtful about my skills. So as a result, it took a long time for me to finish this. As you can see, this is another crossover artwork. And there's lots of random characters. Happy, Morgana, and Iggy, and the majority of them are pretty much from anime. Well, except for Morgana. While he technically isn't an anime, I think he's more part of a video game to say the least. Anyways, I think they're pretty in character, to be honest. The background also doesn't look too bad. Here's part 2 with Gabumon from Digimon, Chopper from One Piece, and Kiro from Blue Exorcist. They're supposed to be in a log cabin. And for the last one we have Marat and Hart from the Marat Dead series, Ritz the Rat from the Friday Night Funkin' series, Flippy from Happy Tree Friends, and Hawk from the 7 Deadly Sins. I like this one a lot. I think all of them are pretty in character, although Ritz's shoes could be a little better. By the way, around this time, I haven't really used the white stroke anymore. Let's just say I was getting tired of it and I just didn't want to use it anymore. And yeah. Okay, so this was supposed to be for Inktober, in which I would draw all of these characters doing random stuff. Here's the full calendar of all the Inktober projects I did. I think some look pretty decent, others look pretty meh, and some feel a little cringe. Some feel kind of cringe to say the least. And then when you get to the last Inktober drawing, All of the characters are pretty tired for posing for 30 days straight. I don't think this looks too bad, although I feel like I could have done a better job with the placement, and the sweat could also be a lot better as well. Okay, so this is fan art of Ghost of White Fox. Around his face and body, I added some blending into those areas to kind of enhance the drawing in a way. I think the background looks great, by the way. As you can see, I also added some blending to the background as well, and some like light areas. And I feel like, what are those things? Sun rays? Light rays? Those things coming down from the sun. And yeah, I think this fan art looks pretty good. Okay, this was for Lilo and Stitch's 20th anniversary. I thought I'd make some fan art celebrating the movie's anniversary since Lilo and Stitch is one of my all-time favorite movies. I think the background looks pretty awesome, and I think their perspective is very good as well. And overall, I think the drawing looks pretty decent. I can definitely see I've been improving a lot around this time. Okay, so this is another challenge similar to 6 fan arts, in which I have to draw Splendid in different ways. This was a pretty fun challenge to do. I think I did a decent job with it. I think I did a decent job with the challenge. Okay, so this is basically birthday artwork of me, and something that looks like a traditional art style. I thought I went with this style because why not? I also have an animated version too. I think it looks pretty decent, although I think the clothing in the arms could be a lot better. I feel like the clothing in the arms could be slightly shorter, to say the least. I also think the perspective could be better as well. Alright, here we go. Last few chapters of my artwork. So at this point, art has become a main priority of mine. I'm no longer treating it as a side hobby. As of recording this, I've been actively trying to improve my skills as an artist. I'm also hoping to turn this into a career someday. Oh, and by the way, this would have been, I'm still on chapter 6, but for this part of the video, I'm going to split this section up into 2 parts. One about an ongoing personal project of mine, which I'll talk about in a second, and another about any miscellaneous artwork I made during chapter 7. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so this is a personal series in which I would basically draw my favorite characters in a way that looks like I'm taking a photo of them. In these kinds of drawings, they would react to the photographer and then show their personalities. This one is the first of this series, a portrait of Flowey the Flower. I think I did a pretty good job with this one. I think I did a decent job with the colors and the setting. I say my only criticism of this portrait is that I feel like I made the pupils a little too big. I probably should have made them smaller, and then it would look like he's looking at the camera rather than just ignoring it. That said, part of me feels like Flowey would do something like this. Alrighty, here's my next portrait, Flippy. And he's just chilling at his home. I've also replaced his dog tags with American-inspired medals. Since he's supposed to be a veteran, I think it would make sense to have medals. And I think it's pretty accurate to have these types of medals. The Purple Heart and the Medal of Honor, because the Purple Heart was awarded for those who were injured or killed during war, and the Medal of Honor is the highest award among the armed forces. During the episode Operation Tiger Bomb, Flippy was indeed injured during battle, but then he later managed to defeat many Tiger soldiers, including their general. So if you think about it, it makes a little sense that Flippy would be awarded these kinds of medals. I think this one also looks pretty good. Flippy is an introverted kind of guy, and I think it's pretty in character for him to do this. I thought about making one more part where the photographer takes a flash photography of him to try to turn him into his alter ego, Flickpy. I think that's how you pronounce it. But I didn't think it was worth it. By the way, this isn't the original portrait. At one point I decided to edit his right leg because it kind of fell out of proportion. It kind of fell out of placement, if you know what I mean. This was the original photo. And as you saw earlier, this is supposed to be the new version. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this portrait, so let's move on. Okay, so at this point I'm basically 19 years old and we're pretty much on to the next chapter on my art journey. Anyways, for this one I decided to give Mavra a steampunk outfit because Let's just say I thought he looked really cool wearing that outfit. Wearing that type of outfit. Let me explain. Okay, so one day I was scrolling for Twitter and I saw a bunch of artworks of Madara in a steampunk outfit. And I thought it looked really cool. I thought it looked really awesome. Basically, it was for a trend on Twitter in which you would draw Madara and Haru in different scenarios or outfits. But anyways, I thought it was a good idea to just give him a steampunk outfit for this portrait. I think for the most part this portrait looks pretty good. I like the pose a lot. I think it will make sense for him to be in a sewer. One thing I wish I could fix is the goggles because it feels a little out of place in my opinion. It feels kind of out of place. I think the right goggle should be slightly moved towards the left. But other than that, I think it looks pretty decent. For this one I tried doing liner in a different way because honestly, like, let's just say the liner part is always, it's like, the liner part is just always the hard part for me. Like, I just can't seem to get it right for some reason. It just feels very time consuming. So I just thought I'd change up the way I do the line art. This is basically how I did the line art. Overall, I think the line art looks pretty good, by the way. Also, like Mad Red, I thought I would give Hart a cosplay costume, so I gave him some sunglasses in the portrait. And then I had the setting take place on the beach. Overall, I think this portrait looks pretty good. I think this portrait looks pretty decent. Oh, and this was another portrait in which I made edits too. This time I changed his entire body to basically make it more accurate to how Hart is supposed to look like in the original series. I probably might make one more edit on his eye, but I don't know for sure. And yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this portrait. Okay, for this one I edited 2 times. In particular, I edited his head 2 times because I wasn't really satisfied with it. These were the original versions. I also have a gory version of this one. I think this one looks pretty good. I think it's pretty in character for him to try to like attack the photographer. Also, drawing the action pose was a little hard for me to do. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this portrait. This one's another one I did. So Sniffles here is just chilling after a day of school. Originally I was going to have Sniffles hang out in the school, but for some reason I decided to change the background to a cafe. Cause why not? As you can see, I kind of slightly changed Sniffles' design, gave him some school supplies and a backpack, and yeah. I don't really have much else to say about this portrait. I think the portrait looks kinda good. And yeah, I don't have much else to say about it. Okay, this one's one of my favorites. So, Handy decides to pose for the portrait, and then if you look down here at the lower left corner, you can see he accidentally dropped his wrench. And now he's mad at the photographer for letting that happen. Definitely in character for him to do that. And yeah, I think I did a good job with this one. As you just saw, I drew a lot of Happy Tree Friends portraits. Let's just say I was into the franchise at the time, and I ended up making a lot of portraits of characters from the Happy Tree Friends series. Don't worry though, the majority of them are not gory. They don't contain any blood. And yeah, let's continue. For this one I wanted to make precise lines again because, let's just say for a certain art style. The pose was kind of hard to do at first because I wanted him to do an action pose. But eventually I managed to figure it out. I've also wanted to add some black shading to kind of have that comic style feel. And I also gave him muscles cause why not? Honestly, I think he looks really good with those muscles. I think he looks really good. Besides, Splendid is supposed to be a superhero, so wouldn't it make sense for superheroes like him to have muscles? And yeah, I think this portrait looks pretty good. I think this picture looks pretty good. Okay, this one is definitely in character for him to do this. It's definitely in character for him to make a pose like this. He's touching an invisible wall and then he's waving at the photographer. I think mimes commonly do that, right? I think this one looks good as well. My only criticism is that I feel like I could have drawn the background a little better. I feel like I could have done a better job with the perspective. maybe not have some areas feel so cramped, to say the least, or feel so small. But aside from them, I think the portrait looks pretty good. Okay, so around this time, I had just purchased Clip Studio Paint and I wanted to get used to the program, but I figured it wasn't going to be easy doing that. So I did the sketch, liner, and coloring part on Procreate and then moved the files to Clip Studio and then rendered it on there. I did that so I can slowly get used to the program and learn how everything works. And this plan definitely helped me get used to using Clip Studio. Over time, I got used to doing more steps of my drawing process on Clip Studio, such as the liner and the coloring part. The only part of the process I still prefer doing on Procreate is the sketching part, because I simply feel more comfortable doing the sketching part on Procreate. Aside from that, I think Clip Studio is a wonderful program. Procreate isn't a bad program, but it has more limitations than Clip Studio, mostly because mobile devices tend to be less powerful than computers. But anyways, for my first time making artwork in Clip Studio, I think I did a decent job. I think the result looks pretty good. I also originally had two parts, this one, and I added a third part to give more context of what's happening. Overall, I think this portrait looks pretty. I think this one looks pretty good, one of my favorites. One thing I wish I could have changed is the legs, the back legs. I probably could have drawn them a lot better, and I should have applied some foreshortening as well. Aside from that, I think it looks pretty good. Uh-oh, Iggy Stan's about to attack the photographer. You might want to run. I think this one also looks pretty decent, although I probably should have made the arms a little bigger and the head slightly smaller. Speaking of, drawing the arms was kind of hard to do because, let's just say, it was difficult to get the pose I wanted, and I had to redraw them multiple times. And like I said, I'm not fully satisfied with it. I do wish I could have made them slightly bigger. I've also given him some bluish winter colors because he's basically in a winter environment, so it would make sense to have colors like these. Okay, I don't have much to say about these ones, but I think both of them are in character and I think they would react to the photographer that way. Overall, I think the portraits look pretty good. Okay, let me give some context. If you watch the Pokemon XY series, you can see that Punichan, or Punichan, you can see that Punichan is more friendly towards humans, and then Z2 is more hostile towards them because, let's just say they're suspicious towards humans. That's why I thought I displayed their personalities that way. Okay, here's another one. I believe I did the sketch and liner in Procreate and then everything else in Clip Studio. I think this one looks pretty good, although I feel like I could have done a slightly better job with the legs. I also wish I could have changed the background as well, or at least fixed the perspective of the background. Here's Lifty. I don't really have much to say about this one, although I think I did a decent job with the Lifty and the Shifty portraits. I think both of them are in character and both of them would definitely do something like this. I also gave Lifty a leather jacket, cause why not? Okay, so I was debating whether I should leave this portrait out of the video or not, but I already showed him a couple times in the video, so I might as well just talk about this portrait. I never uploaded this to any social media platforms, so this would be my first time showing this portrait online. But anyways, I think this portrait looks pretty okay. I think I did a good job with the perspective and I think it's pretty accurate for him to wear some kind of wealthy clothing, since he likes collecting money. Drawing him was kinda difficult though, because I'm not really used to seeing him in 2D. As of recording this, I'm still having doubts about the way I drew him, in particular the way I drew his head, but aside from that, I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so now at this point I'm pretty much used to Clip Studio Paint, and I've been using it on a regular basis. And it's been helping me draw more efficiently. Also, I feel like my style has slightly... How should I put this? I feel like my art style has slightly changed when I started using Clip Studio more often. It feels more professional to say the least. For this one I just did the sketch on Procreate and then finished the rest of the drawing in Clip Studio. I also added some airbrush shading to the right. Also, can anyone tell which kind of whale he's riding on? Let's just say I thought I'd add a little Easter egg. Anyways, I think this one looks pretty good. It's definitely in character for him to go on sea adventures. So at this point, you can definitely see that I'm showing lots of signs of improvement. I feel like I've definitely come a long way since I made those cringy/trace drawings years ago. Now, this is a character I really wanted to make fan art of, because I just love the guy so much. As you can see, I put in a lot of effort in adding a lot of detail to the artwork, and honestly, I think it looks amazing. I think it looks beautiful as well. I wanted to make him kind of intimidating, so I made the background a bit dark, added drilling to his mouth, and then I basically drew a hungry expression. It feels like he wants to eat the photographer. Now, normally when it comes to drawing monsters, I get pretty intimidated to draw them because they seem pretty difficult to do. But for this guy, I just had to do it. I literally just had to do it, and I think it turned out pretty great. Okay, another Happy Tree Friends portrait. This one doesn't look too bad. I think it's pretty in character for Flaky to do this. I didn't have as much airbrush shading as I did with Atrocian, but overall I don't think it looks too bad. Okay, so now I'm covering the most recent portraits I've made, and this one was pretty easy to do. It's basically just Goomba walking down the street. So when I was making this, I wanted to have Goomba be an average civilian rather than a member of the Koopa Troop. So I thought I'd give him that blue cap to represent that. And I think this portrait looks pretty decent, and I don't really have much else to say about this portrait. Okay, here's another one. Okay, for this one, while I was working on this, I found that his anatomy was a little weird, so I thought I'd just change it up a bit. I was also debating whether I should have the background in the forest or a building, and ultimately I chose to have it take place in the forest. Now, when I was growing up, I didn't really watch Invader Sim that much as a kid, but I saw some people talking about him in one of the Discord servers I was in, which got me interested in the character. Eventually, I decided to make a portrait of him. And yeah, the portrait turned out to be pretty good. It turned out pretty well. Okay, Snoopy and Woodstock. They were pretty easy to draw. They were pretty easy to do. As for the background, I kind of went for 50s and 60s style look because both of them made their first appearances during that time. When I was designing the background, I was debating whether I should have a generic 1950s wall or a 1960s psychedelic wall. In the end, I kind of went for a mix of both. The wall kind of has a 1950s design, and for the color choice, I kind of went for a 1960s vibe. I was also only going to draw just Snoopy, but I thought I'd include Woodstock as well, since he's almost always with them in the shows, the TV specials, and the comics. And yeah, I think I did a pretty awesome job with the portrait. Okay, so this is my latest one as of recording this. I think I did a pretty good job with this one. One part of the artwork I had trouble drawing was the eyebrows. Let's just say they kind of had a unique design, and how should I put this? It was hard for me to basically get it right. It was hard for me to be satisfied with it, and I ended up redrawing it multiple times. Aside from that, this portrait was pretty easy to do, and I think it looked pretty decent. Okay, so this was for a game called Mad Box Dead, a Mad Rat Dead fan game, and I wanted to add some custom sprites to the game, so I made Cheesy Bullet Bill. So far, this is one of the only few sprites I've made. I plan on making more, but I haven't really found the motivation to do it. And yeah, I don't think this looks too bad. I think I did a good job mixing the Bullet Bill and the Mad Rat Dead enemies together. Okay, these, I don't really have much to say about these ones, but they're just backgrounds for live streaming. Let's just say if I just try something different. And yeah, I think they look pretty good. Okay, this was also for live streaming. It's basically a PNG tuber of myself. Honestly, I don't really like it that much. The lines are too thick. But it's pretty outdated. It feels pretty outdated. I'll explain why in a bit. But yeah, I'm definitely going to make another one of these. Alrighty, we finally reached the latest chapter of my art journey. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is supposed to be a fictional version of my real life self. As you can see, he has the same birthday as me, the same gender. He's obviously human. has the same hobbies, and in many ways he's pretty much similar to me. I didn't want him to be too realistic because I honestly think he would look a little weird if he was, to be honest. So I opted for a more anime style, a more artistic style, to say the least. He's not really that special. He's basically just your average normie. Just your average regular person, if you know what I mean. When I was designing him, it was tough for me to make the perfect design for JM. Like I said, I didn't want him to be too realistic, but I also had difficulties trying to make the perfect fictional version of myself. One that I can appreciate. I often thought his head design was pretty weird, so I would end up changing it a lot. In the end, I'm pretty satisfied with how he currently looks. And yeah, so this is my main mascot for most of my social media pages. Honestly, I'm very glad I finally have a reference sheet of him and JM. Before, I would just use pre-existing artwork as a reference whenever I drew these OCs. Whenever I drew these guys. To give an example of what I'm talking about, the PNG tuber I mentioned earlier was made before I created these reference sheets. As you can imagine, I used pre-existing artwork to make the PNG tuber, because I didn't have a proper reference sheet of J Mario when I was working on it. And now it's pretty much outdated, as I mentioned. So now I need to make a proper and accurate PNG tuber of J Mario. Anyways, this guy is supposed to be a spirit, and he's basically going to follow JM throughout his journeys. Travel with him wherever he goes. As you can imagine, he currently serves as JM's persona. The reason he became a spirit is because he died at a very young age. And ever since, he's been following JM throughout his journeys. The reason he works at Birdmath is because, let's just say, he wants to fit in society, fit in with other people. He's a pretty nervous person due to some trauma he experienced. And he doesn't really talk much. Except to JM, of course. I'm still debating what kind of powers I should give him, though. A few more things. J Mario is a representation of my self-conscious, my self-awareness, my inner thoughts. He's a representation of part of who I am as a person. Let's see. About J Mario's birthday. It's not really a birthday, but more of an anniversary. It's the day where the name J Mario came to existence. It's the day when I decided to make a small decision to sign up for a certain MMO game. And believe it or not, that decision ended up leading to so many things in my life. So to celebrate that day, I decided to make J Mario's birthday the day I made that small decision. Okay, what else? Many of J Mario's design was inspired by real-life experiences, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. The mask in particular was directly inspired by that. One more thing, since this was just a reference sheet, I didn't add as much details as I usually do with my illustrations and portraits. Instead, I opted for a more simpler, less detailed style. To be honest, this style kind of feels on par with my art style during Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. Okay, as for the name J Mario Sonic existed for a long time, dating back since 2018. The thing was, I didn't really think much of that name at the time. I just kinda randomly chose that name and treated it as a regular username. The name itself doesn't really mean anything. It wasn't until 2020 where I started treating J Mario as my mascot, my original character, my main OC. And then, as I mentioned, it wasn't until this year where I had a proper OC, a proper reference sheet for J Mario. And he's gone through a lot of changes since then. He's definitely gone through a lot of changes. And yeah, I'm glad I finally have reference sheets for my OCs. So now I can start including them in my artwork more often. Okay, so this was what I was planning to use my OCs for. To make some comics based on certain life experiences I had. This comic in particular is supposed to represent what my experience on Twitter was like. Or at least one part of it. As you can see in the first panel, JM is way more social and is pretty extroverted. And then when you get to the bottom panel, you can see that he's sitting by himself, thinking about a lot of stuff, which is giving him negative emotions. And then on the upper left corner, you can see two guys arguing while being polluted by some clouds. About my thoughts about Twitter, I can't deny that Twitter is indeed a fucking shit show. Like, there's just so much negativity on it. Every day it's someone did this, someone did that, drama after drama, and then the algorithms don't really help with that. They're basically designed to keep you on the platform, which really just adds to the problem, especially when you're trying to do productive stuff. That said, I will admit, without Twitter, I probably would not be the person I am today. So I'm kind of a bit mixed on Twitter. Still, the whole site is just too much for me. Dealing with all this negativity on the platform is just too much for me. I'm not as active on Twitter as I used to be. I already deleted Twitter on my phone months ago. And I mostly just post my artwork on there. I don't really socialize as much. In addition to dealing with all this negativity, Elon Musk really screwed up the platform, implementing unnecessary changes, changing the logo to X, and it's just not been fun. It's not been fun at all. Anyways, when I was making this comic, I originally wanted to do 2 pages with 4 panels each showcasing before and after scenarios. But I kind of realized I wasn't really ready for that. So instead I opted for 1 page and 2 panels, showcasing 1 scenario. And since this was my first time making a comic, I didn't really want to add any colors to it because I felt like I wasn't really ready for that. So instead I just opted to get to the line art part. Overall, I think I did a pretty good job with this comic. I do plan on making more of these, talking about my life experiences in the form of a comic. Okay, this was based off a journal entry of mine. So this kind of showcases technology that was slowly being developed, such as indie games to VR headset, Amazon, streaming services, and technology that slowly disappears, such as the iPod, flash games, the CD, and cable television. Honestly, it's kind of crazy how, in just a few decades, the internet has significantly changed the world. No, not just the internet. Technology as a whole has significantly changed our world. Just about 2 to 3 decades ago, the world was a different place, and now with the internet, lots of things have changed. The way we listen to music, the way we socialize with each other, the way we watch TV shows and movies, the way we play games, all of that has significantly changed. By the way, before I've made this, I made 2 different kinds of fonts for my comics like this one. A graffiti style font, and a pretty artistic font. The artistic font feels a little on par with my handwriting. The graffiti style font is going to be used for titles and stuff, while the artistic font is going to be used for dialogue and my watermark. And my watermark for comics. The reason I made these fonts is because I thought it'd be pretty authentic to have original fonts, rather than just use existing ones. And yeah, I think I did a pretty decent job with the comic. I think I did a pretty good job with the comic. Okay, so this is going to be the last try I'm going to talk about for this video. Long story short, this is basically a bird form for J Mario, and it's going to serve as my new persona. Part of the reason I made this was so that I can have a reference for a VR chat avatar, which is pretty much finished by now. This is what the VR chat avatar looks like. Anyway, I think this looks pretty good. The anatomy looks okay, and the design is pretty good as well. As you can imagine, his colors are pretty similar to J Mario's. And his breed is supposed to be a raven. Some inspirations for J Mario's bird form was 2 of my favorite birds from different franchises. Starafter from Pokemon, and Petchap from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And yeah, that's all I have to say about J Mario's bird form. So yeah, that is basically my thoughts for most of the artwork I've made. I didn't talk about every artwork I've made, but I think I talked about the majority of them. Here are my final thoughts. First of all, I just want to say that if you made it this far into the video, thank you. Thank you for sticking around for this long. I really appreciate it. I really do. And anyways, not gonna lie, this video was mentally hard for me to do. For one thing, I have never done a video like this before on my channel. And I don't think I've ever been this honest about something. I don't think I've ever really expressed my thoughts like this before. As of finishing this, I'm very nervous to actually upload it. That said, this was a video I wanted to do for a long time, And now, and now I finally did. I finally did it. Honestly, doing this video kind of made me realize a few things. If you haven't noticed, I didn't really have a lot to say about the earliest artwork I had. But as I got to more recent works, I had more things to say. I had more things to say about them. I think one of the reasons why is because I didn't really think things out when it came to the earliest artwork I had. I kind of just did random drawings, saw what other people did, and then tried doing that thing myself. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't really think about how I was going to execute it. But then later on, I started to plan things more carefully. I started to actually think about the kind of artwork I was making, and then I thought about how I was going to basically execute the project, bring the project to life. So as a result, I had more things to say about the recent works. I had a lot more things to say about the recent works. Another thing I realized is that I think my art journey kind of reflects how I was as a person and how I am now. If you have a look at the first 3 chapters, you can see that I mostly drew traced artwork. I think this shows that I was a kid / early teens who was kind of naive about a lot of things. I thought certain things were okay when it wasn't. I didn't think about what kind of artwork I was making, and I was just developing my skills. I was just developing my art skills. Then when we get to the next 3 chapters, let's just say I drew very bizarre artwork. And I mean very bizarre. Weird depictions, numerous crossovers, lots of inconsistency and randomness, lots of edgy artwork, all that jazz. I think this shows that I was a pretty edgy teenager who didn't know shit about a lot of things. Sure, my skills may have improved, but I still had a lot to learn. And I still didn't really think things out when it came to my artwork. Also at the time, I kind of thought many of these pieces were masterpieces, but like I said, I didn't know shit. And finally, when we get to the latest chapters, you can see that my artwork is a lot better. Better depictions, better executions, I'm actually planning things out, and overall just better than my previous work. Despite all of this, however, I still feel like there's lots of things for me to learn. For example, I feel like I need more practice with anatomy. As of recording this, I'm actually reading a book about anatomy. I also think my skills on perspective and gestures could use some work. I think this shows that, while I have become an adult and grown in a lot of areas, I still feel like there's lots of things for me to learn. I'm still trying to figure things out. Who knows, maybe in a few years from now, I may not see a lot of my recent work as masterpieces. But I don't think they are. I shouldn't really consider them masterpieces. Pretty good artwork, yes, but I wouldn't really consider it to be a masterpiece. One more thing I realized is that I think I've become more afraid to express myself a bit. I feel like I've become more reserved. And I think a reason why is because I think my social anxiety has gotten a little worse for the past year or so. Which is also probably why it was mentally hard for me to make this video. But anyways, I think I had a pretty interesting art journey. While I've definitely made a lot of cringy artwork, I've also made a lot of good ones too. Obviously I still have a lot to learn, but I think I'm going on the right path. Now, would I make a video like this again? Not anytime soon. Probably when I make 100 drawings again, I might. When I make 100 drawings again, I might. So what have I been doing lately in terms of art? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I've taken artwork a lot more seriously these past few years. I've been making plans for my current and future projects. As I mentioned earlier, I purchased some art books so that I can study the art fundamentals. I've been documenting how much artwork I got done every day. I've been discovering which skills I'm currently capable of and what I need to work on. I've been working on a portfolio. And I've also been seriously considering doing more art-focused videos and live streams. So yeah, like I said, this is a pretty interesting art journey. And I think I'm on the right path. or at the very least, I'm getting on the right path. If you want to see some of the artwork I made, the links to my social media pages would be in the description. Anyways, I'm gonna end the video right here. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.